By 9:30, Elaine Vance's 70th birthday had reduced itself to what most good family parties eventually became: half-empty glasses, abandoned napkins, 3 separate arguments about who was taking leftovers, and one sheet cake nobody wanted to admit had gone dry around the edges. I was stacking folding chairs because that was easier than saying goodbye. Not to Elaine. I had already hugged her twice. To Russell. He had spent most of the evening moving through the house, like someone visiting a museum, built from his own childhood. He knew where the extra serving spoons were. He knew which cabinet door needed lifting before it would close. He knew which cousin would complain about traffic before that cousin had even reached the hallway. He also knew exactly how long he could look at me before it became obvious. Or maybe I only thought he did. 22 years was a long time to confuse memory with evidence. Someone called Russell's name from the doorway. He turned, laughed at whatever his aunt had said, and the sound landed in me before I was ready for it. The laugh had changed. Lower now, rougher at the end. Still his. That annoyed me more than it should have. I picked up another chair. You know those go in the garage, right? Russell stood 6 feet away holding 2 empty wine bottles by their necks. I was hoping if I stacked enough of them in the dining room, your mother would assume they were modern furniture. She'd sell them before breakfast. That does sound like Elaine. His mouth moved first when he smiled. It always had. Another thing I wished I had forgotten. He was broader than he had been at 24, not heavier exactly, more settled in his body. His hair was shorter, dark brown gone silver at the temples, and there were lines beside his eyes that made him look less guarded when he laughed. He looked good. I resented that too. From the hallway, Elaine called, "Gavin, sweetheart, leave the chairs. Russell has arms." "I've noticed," I said. Silence. Not long. Long enough. Russell looked at me. I looked very carefully at the chair in my hands. Then Elaine laughed from somewhere out of sight. "Oh, thank God. At least one of you still has timing. Mom, I'm 70. I've earned poor boundaries. You had those at 69. That's why I practiced." I carried the chair toward the garage before Russell could see me smiling. By 10, the house had emptied. His cousins left first, then the neighbors, then Elaine's sister, with 3 containers of food she insisted she had not packed herself. The last car backed out of the driveway, while Elaine stood at the door in stocking feet, waving like she was sending someone across an ocean instead of 3 miles across Asheville. Then she turned to us. "I'm going upstairs." Russell frowned. "You're leaving this?" She surveyed the kitchen. "I raised 2 children. I no longer fear dishes. You invited 40 people. 36. There are enough plates for 40. Some people had seconds." "That's not how plates work." Elaine kissed his cheek. Then she touched my shoulder on the way past. "Don't let him reorganize anything." "I'm standing right here," Russell said. "Yes." That's how I knew to warn him. She started toward the stairs, stopped, and looked back at me. "Oh, Gavin, tell Mara I liked the picture." "I will." Russell's expression changed. Barely. But I saw it. Elaine didn't. She was already halfway upstairs, calling over her shoulder that she had to be awake by 7 because her sister had found cheaper flights to Portugal if they moved the trip forward by 2 weeks. Russell stared after her. "Portugal?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, apparently. "For how long?" She said 5 weeks. "She told you?" "She told everyone at dinner. I was getting ice." "You were gone for maybe 90 seconds. Apparently my family has learned to weaponize timing." He rubbed a hand over his face. For the first time all evening, he looked tired instead of older. Elaine traveling shouldn't have mattered. She was healthy, independent, 70, not dead. But Russell had spent most of his adult life moving from city to city for work. Elaine's house had probably remained fixed in his head simply because he needed something too. I knew better than to say that aloud. He glanced toward the stairs, then back at me. "You leaving?" The question was casual enough to be dangerous. I was planning to. He nodded once. Then set the bottles down. "Do you have 10 minutes?" There it was. Not dramatic. No speech. No meaningful object pulled from a pocket. 10 minutes. I looked toward the front door as if it might provide legal counsel. For what? I don't know yet. That's comforting. I've had exactly one beer. Not what I meant. I know. He said it quietly. The room changed. Not much. Enough. I should have left. Instead, I looked at the clock above Elaine's stove. 10. Russell smiled. Still negotiating everything down. You remember that? Some things. That answer was worse than I expected. We stayed in the kitchen. Neither of us suggested the living room. Too intimate. The table was covered in plates, discarded ribbon, a bowl of melted ice, and somebody's sunglasses. Russell cleared 2 spaces with his forearm and sat across from me. For the first 30 seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "This is weird." I laughed. You asked me to stay so you could provide professional analysis? I manage touring productions. Weird is one of my technical terms. I thought those were mostly late, broken, and who approved this? His eyebrows lifted. You remember my job. I remember what Elaine complains about. That's colder. It's more accurate. He smiled, but this time his eyes stayed on me. I could feel the attention physically. That was the problem with first love. Your body could become nostalgic before your judgment had even found its coat. So, I said, how's work? Absolutely not. What? We are not doing 22 years through small talk. That seems efficient. You hate small talk. You think I hate small talk? You do. I'm an insurance underwriter. That doesn't mean anything. It means I've monetized small talk. He leaned back. You still do that. Do what? Turn serious things into jokes before they can reach you. The words hit harder than they deserved to. I stared at him. He stared back. And suddenly I was 23 again, except I wasn't, and that distinction mattered enough to make me angry. You've been back in town for 12 hours. 14. Congratulations. You're already irritating. That feels familiar. There's your problem. His smile disappeared. I hadn't meant to say it that sharply. Or maybe I had. Before either of us could decide, my phone lit up on the table. Russell's gaze dropped automatically. The lock screen was a picture of Mara and me outside her dorm in August. She was making a face because I had tried to take the picture 3 times and somehow cut off the top of her head in all 3. Russell looked at the screen. Then at me. Your niece? I almost laughed. Instead, I picked up the phone. My daughter. He went completely still. Not theatrically, just blank for a second. You're my daughter. You have a daughter. Yes. How old? 19. He blinked. I watched him calculate. It should not have bothered me. It did. Gavin, I didn't know. I figured. Were you? He stopped. I waited. Were you married? 16 years. The silence after that was different. Less charged. More honest. Russell looked down at the table. What was her name? Dana. Was. We're divorced. She's alive. His head came up. I didn't mean. I know what you meant. I'm doing very well. You asked for 10 minutes. I may need a revised estimate. That made me smile despite myself. Russell noticed. Of course he did. So Mara's in college? First year. Here? Chapel Hill. And Dana? Still in Asheville. You two. Get along. He nodded slowly. I could almost see him trying to insert 16 years of marriage, a daughter, a divorce, an entire adulthood into a version of me he had apparently kept stored somewhere untouched. It didn't fit. Good. That should have satisfied me. Instead, I felt something unexpectedly cruel in the satisfaction. Russell had missed almost everything, and I had missed almost everything about him. For years, that had seemed fair. Sitting across from him now, it just felt large. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of a paper napkin. Then he looked at me. Are you happy? I had expected curiosity, maybe an apology. Not that. I looked at the clock again. 43 minutes had passed. That's a much bigger question than 10 minutes. I know. You keep saying that. I'm noticing. I stood. Russell did too, immediately, like some part of him thought I might disappear if he moved too slowly. For half a second we were closer than we had been all night. Close enough for me to notice he still smelled faintly like cedar soap. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe memory was doing half the work. That scared me more than recognition. At the front door, Russell opened it, then paused. Can I see you again before I leave? When are you leaving? Sunday. It was Thursday. 3 days. I should have said something cautious. Instead, I asked, do you still drink terrible coffee? He frowned. I never drank terrible coffee. You absolutely did. You used to put vanilla syrup in yours. I was 23. The words came out before I could stop them. Russell's expression shifted. Not hurt. Attention. Like he had heard something underneath them. I stepped outside. Good night, Russell. Good night, Gavin. I made it halfway to my car before he called my name. I turned. He stood under the porch light, one hand still on the open door. I meant it. About the coffee? About seeing you. There were at least 10 safe answers available. I chose none of them. Then ask me tomorrow. He nodded. I got into my car before I could decide whether I had just set a boundary or opened a door. Russell texted me at 8:14 the next morning. Coffee? I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then another appeared. Good coffee. Apparently this is now a contractual term. I smiled before I could stop myself. You have until 11. His reply came immediately. Still negotiating everything down. I met him 40 minutes later at a cafe in the River Arts District that had not existed when we were 23. That was deliberate. Russell noticed. I thought you'd pick Hendersonville Road. I thought you wanted to see me. I do. Then stop trying to recreate the original set. He gave me a look over the rim of his coffee. Stage production joke? You've been back 26 hours, and I'm already adapting. We took our cups outside. The morning was cool enough that people kept drifting between sun and shade, changing tables every few minutes, like plants with opinions. Russell fell into step beside me. For a while, the conversation was easy. Work, his mother, the impossible price of hotels in cities that had once been cheap, my daughter calling me at midnight because she had discovered laundry could turn pink. Then Russell pointed at a restaurant across the street. You would hate that place. I looked at it. Why? Too precious. I ate there last month. He glanced at me. And? I liked it. You hate tiny portions. I used to. You said food shouldn't need an explanation. I was 23. There it was again. The tiny pause. The tiny pause. Russell shoved one hand into his jacket pocket. Right. We kept walking. 10 minutes later, he tried again. A musician was setting up outside a brewery. Russell nodded toward him. Still hate bluegrass? No. That one genuinely surprised him. You hated bluegrass. My daughter played fiddle for 6 years. Mara? Yes. So you changed your mind. Repeated exposure under parental obligation can alter a man. He laughed. I liked making him laugh. That was inconvenient. He studied me for another few steps. You still hate cilantro? Yes. His expression brightened. Ha. Don't get excited. I got one. You're keeping score? I wasn't. You absolutely were. Maybe a little. I stopped. Russell took 2 more steps before realizing. When he turned, I said, That's what I mean. His face changed. What? This. I gestured between us. You keep checking. Checking what? How much of me is still there? His mouth tightened. I'm not trying to. You are. He looked away toward the street. A delivery truck rolled through the intersection between us and the morning sun. Finally he said, I remember you. That's not the same thing as knowing me. I know. You keep saying that too. He exhaled. Fine. Fine what? I don't know you. Something in the way he said it took the heat out of me. Not defensive. Not dramatic. Just unpleasantly honest. He looked back at me. I know what you were like when you were 23. I know what you ordered, what music you complained about, how you got quiet when you were angry, because you thought silence made you look calm. It did. It absolutely did not. I almost smiled. Russell continued. I know you hated asking for directions, and you liked terrible vanilla coffee, and you cried at that stupid movie about the dog. The dog died. The movie announced that in the trailer. That doesn't make it less sad. His mouth twitched. Then he said, but I don't know what happened after. There was no accusation in it. That made it harder. I folded my arms. No. And I think I keep reaching for things I remember, because those are the only things I'm sure I'm allowed to have. That landed somewhere I had not prepared for. A couple walked past us, with a golden retriever between them. I watched the dog instead of Russell. After a moment, I said, if we're going to do this again. His eyes lifted. I immediately regretted the phrasing. Do what? This. Talk. Okay. I don't want you testing yourself on how much you remember. Russell nodded. And I don't want to be treated like I failed because I changed. I'm not doing that. You told me I hate 3 things I now like before 10 in the morning. That's not failing. It feels like an exam. He looked down at his coffee, then back at me. What do you want me to do? I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. That irritated me. I don't know yet. For once, Russell did not rescue the conversation. He just nodded. All right. We started walking again. Neither of us mentioned the fact that I had said we were going to do this again. 3 days later, Mara let herself into my apartment while I was looking for my keys. This was impressive considering the keys were in my hand. You're getting worse, she said. I'm distracted. That's what people say before they lose their wallet in the refrigerator. You did that once. I was 12. You see, some things remain relevant. She rolled her eyes and went straight to the kitchen. Mara had my dark hair, Dana's eyes, and the deeply unfair confidence of someone who had never had to learn how to stand in a room without apologizing for taking up space. She was home for exactly 26 minutes. She needed a winter coat she had left behind and a folder containing paperwork for a campus job. She also ate half a container of hummus, criticized the contents of my refrigerator, and informed me that Dana believed I had been buying the wrong olive oil for approximately 11 years. Then the buzzer sounded. Mara glanced toward the door. You expecting someone? No. The buzzer sounded again. I crossed the room. Russell stood downstairs. My stomach tightened. I had forgotten he said he might stop by before dinner with his mother. I let him in. Mara saw my face. Oh, don't. I didn't say anything. You made a sound. That was breathing. Russell knocked. I opened the door. He looked at me, then at Mara over my shoulder. For 1 second, I watched him connect the photograph on my phone with the person standing 10 feet away, wearing one of my old college sweatshirts. Mara, I said, this is Russell. Her eyebrows rose slightly. She knew the name. Of course she did. Dana had never hidden my past from her, and neither had I. Russell looked suddenly less composed than I had ever seen him. Hi. Mara smiled. Hi. That's a very confident sweatshirt. She looked down. It was his. Russell nodded slowly. That explains it. I looked at him. What does? You hated that color. Mara turned to me. You hated green? I apparently hated everything. Russell laughed. So did Mara. I did not. Then I did. It was impossible not to. Mara grabbed her coat and folder. I have to go. You just got here. I have a study group. You drove 2 hours for a coat. I also came to confirm you're still alive. Russell stepped aside to let her pass. Mara hugged me, then looked at Russell. Nice meeting you. You too. At the door, she glanced back at me. Call Mom. Why? She says you're ignoring her. I spoke to her yesterday. Apparently it was insufficient. Then she was gone. The apartment felt different after the door closed. Russell stood in the middle of my living room. You were married 16 years. Yes. And Dana lives here. In Asheville. You all get along. Mostly. He nodded. I could see the effort in his face. Not jealousy. Something more complicated. He looked toward the door Mara had just left through. She looks like you. Only when she's annoyed. So often? She's 19. He smiled. Then his expression changed. Can I ask you something without getting it wrong? That seems ambitious. I'm serious. So am I. He waited. I sighed. Ask. Russell looked at me carefully. When you married Dana, I already knew where the sentence was going. That made the answer come faster. No. He stopped. I didn't finish. You didn't need to. Gavin. I wasn't hiding. His face tightened. I didn't say that. You were going to ask whether I married her because it was easier. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I leaned against the back of the sofa. Dana wasn't camouflage. I know. No, you don't. Russell went quiet. Our marriage ended, I said. That doesn't mean it was fake. I didn't mean fake. Then don't make it temporary in retrospect. He rubbed the heel of his hand against his jaw. I'm doing this badly. Yes. I'm sorry. I waited for the second half. The explanation. The defense. It did not come. Russell looked at the floor. Then he said, I got that wrong. That was all. I hated how much that helped. I moved toward the kitchen. Want water? Sure. I handed him a glass. No ceremony. No old habits. He took it. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then Russell said, Do you still want to see me tomorrow? I turned. What's tomorrow? I thought we could spend the day together. Doing what? I had ideas. That sounds dangerous. They were mostly places we used to. No. He stopped. I set my glass down. If we do tomorrow, nowhere we used to go. Russell studied me. No old restaurant. No. No park. No. No record store. That place closed 15 years ago. I know. Good. He almost smiled, then nodded. New places. New places. The next morning, Russell picked me up at 10. He refused to tell me where we were going. You understand this conflicts with everything I know about risk management. You insure commercial property. I manage uncertainty professionally. You alphabetize your spices. I stared at him. How do you know that? You did it at 23. I do not do that anymore. Russell grinned. Progress. We drove east. Not far. Just enough to leave the streets that belonged to our 20s. The first place was a small art market and a converted textile warehouse. I had never been there. Neither had he. That mattered more than I expected. We walked slowly, argued about a painting, bought nothing. At lunch, Russell ordered something with cilantro and watched me take a bite. I pointed my fork at him. Do not make this symbolic. I'm enjoying being right about nothing. Healthy development. Later we walked along a trail beside the river. Not the one we used to know. The sun had started dropping by the time Russell leaned against the railing. We had spent most of the afternoon talking around relationships without discussing ours. He told me about touring. I told him about my divorce, without making Dana the subject of a tragedy. He told me about a man named Patrick he had loved for almost 4 years. Something sharp moved through me. Not jealousy exactly. Recognition. Russell had not spent 22 years waiting for me either. Good. Painful. Good. There were other people, he said. I assumed. You don't seem surprised. I'd be more concerned if there weren't. He laughed softly. Were there people after Dana? Yes. Serious? Some. And now? I should have lied. Instead I said, now I'm standing beside a river with my first boyfriend, while pretending I'm not thinking about kissing him. Russell went very still. I had not planned to say it. That was becoming a problem. His gaze dropped to my mouth. This time I knew I wasn't imagining it. I stepped closer. Russell did not move away. For 1 second, the distance between us felt familiar. Then I realized I had no idea what kissing him would feel like now. That made me want it more. I touched the side of his face. Not because I remembered doing it, because I wanted to. Russell leaned into my hand, barely. I kissed him. The first second belonged to memory, the shape of his mouth, the way he exhaled through his nose. Then he shifted closer, one hand settling at my waist, and everything changed. He kissed differently now. So did I. There was no 23-year-old version of us hiding inside it. Just two men in their 40s standing beside a river they had never visited together. When we separated, Russell stayed close without touching his forehead to mine. He looked almost amused. What? You still close your eyes too early. I stared at him, then laughed. You ruined it. No. He kissed me again. This time, nothing about it felt old. 3 days later, Russell asked me to dinner at another place I had never been. I was beginning to suspect he had turned my no nostalgia rule into a competitive sport. The restaurant was narrow and loud, with exposed brick, uncomfortable chairs, and a menu that described potatoes with more confidence than most people described their marriages. Russell was already there when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, not because he used to, because apparently somewhere in the last 22 years, he had become a man who stood when his date walked in. Date. The word arrived before I was ready to use it. I sat across from him. You're early. You're 2 minutes late. I'm exactly on time. I've been here 11 minutes. That sounds personal. His eyes moved over my face. It was different now that we had kissed. Before, every glance had required interpretation. Now I knew he wanted me. That should have simplified things. Instead, it made me intensely aware of his mouth. You're staring, Russell said. I'm reading the menu. It's on the table. I'm thinking about the menu. With your eyes on my face. I picked it up. Happy? Deeply. We ordered. Then neither of us mentioned the river. That lasted almost 4 minutes. Russell broke first. So? No. I didn't say anything. You were going to. You don't know that. You have a very specific I'm about to discuss something emotionally inconvenient face. He leaned back. You remember that? I pointed at him. Careful. He laughed. Fine. Present tense. I apparently have a face. Yes. And you apparently recognize it. Yes. Interesting. Russell. The grin faded. Did the kiss mean what I think it meant? There was no elegant way out of that question, so I didn't try. What do you think it meant? That you wanted to kiss me. I did. And I looked at him. There was something almost reckless about how direct he had become. At 24, Russell had been brave physically and evasive everywhere else. Apparently age had rearranged the proportions. And I want to do it again. His shoulders loosened. That's useful information. I work in insurance. Still hate that answer. You knew what you were getting. No. The humor left his voice. That's kind of the point, isn't it? I waited. He rubbed his thumb over the edge of his napkin. I don't know what I'm getting. Neither did I. The waiter arrived with drinks and saved us from answering. For about 30 seconds. Then Russell said, I got offered a tour. I looked up. A tour? National. National. How long? 6 months. The restaurant noise seemed to pull back. When? Starts in 5 weeks. 5 weeks. I put my glass down. And you're thinking about it. I've been thinking about it since before Mom's birthday. That mattered. I wasn't sure why yet. What kind of production? Big enough that I should probably take it. That sounds like an answer. It's not. Better money? Yes. Better credit? Yes. People you like? Mostly. So what's the problem? Russell looked at me. I immediately understood. No. His eyebrows lifted. I haven't asked anything. You're about to. What? Don't make me part of the decision. His face closed slightly. I wasn't. You were. I was going to ask what you thought. That's different. Yes. No. He looked away. I leaned forward. Russell, if you want the job, take the job. I didn't say I want it. Then decide that. His mouth tightened. You know, there are ways to have an opinion without assuming responsibility for my life. That sounds rehearsed. It's not. Then it's annoyingly good. He almost smiled. Almost. I knew I had disappointed him. That bothered me. It also felt necessary. He picked up his glass. What if I said I wanted a reason not to go? I held his gaze. Then I'd ask whether you wanted me or an excuse. That landed harder than I intended. Russell looked down. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "All right." No accusation, no dramatic retreat. Just all right. Dinner recovered. Mostly. We talked about Mara's classes, a disastrous touring production Russell had managed in Denver, and my company's annual attempt to convince employees that a mandatory seminar could be described as a retreat. When we left, Russell walked me to my car. He stopped beside the driver's door. I'm not angry. I didn't ask. You're doing that thing. What thing? Where you act like you don't care whether I'm angry so you don't have to admit you care. I stared at him. That sounds suspiciously like remembering me. No. You did it 15 minutes ago. I laughed despite myself. Fine. I'm not angry. Good. I am disappointed. That's allowed. I know. He stepped closer. My body responded before the conversation had finished. His hand came to rest lightly at my side. Not claiming. Just there. Can I still kiss you? I answered by doing it first. The kiss was shorter than the one by the river. Less discovery. More confirmation. When he stepped back, he said, "That was evasive." It was extremely clear. You didn't answer the question. I kissed you. That's not language. It communicated. He shook his head. Good night, Gavin. Good night. A week later, I stopped at Elaine's house to return a casserole dish she had somehow sent home with me after the birthday. Russell's car was in the driveway. I considered leaving the dish on the porch. Then Elaine opened the door before I could escape. Don't be ridiculous. I haven't done anything. You're standing behind a hydrangea. I dropped something. You're holding a casserole dish. Maybe I dropped dignity. That went years ago. Come in. She took the dish and headed toward the kitchen. Russell was at the dining table with a laptop open and several printed itineraries spread around him. He looked up. Warmth crossed his face first. Then caution. That was new. Hey. Elaine opened the refrigerator. Russell thinks I'm incapable of traveling without him. I did not say that. You sent me a 14-page document. It's an itinerary. It has emergency numbers. You are going to Portugal. Portugal has telephones. Russell looked at me. She booked 3 hotels that don't exist anymore. 1 changed names. 2 closed. Elaine waved him off. I survived raising you. I'm beginning to understand why that argument works on everyone except me. I leaned against the doorway. When are you going? End of the month, Elaine said. Russell stared at her. You moved it again? My sister found cheaper flights. You were going in October. Now September. You said 5 weeks. I changed my mind. Russell looked genuinely offended by the concept. Elaine laughed. Oh, sweetheart. You've spent 20 years changing cities every few months, and now you're shocked I bought a plane ticket? That's different. Because you're the one leaving? Silence. Elaine returned to the refrigerator as if she had not just dismantled him with 1 sentence. Russell glanced at me. I tried not to smile. Don't. I'm not doing anything. You're enjoying this. Deeply. Elaine pointed toward the hallway. There are more boxes in the guest room, if either of you feels like being useful. I went still. Russell did too. Then Elaine looked between us. What? Nothing, I said quickly. Russell covered his mouth with one hand. His shoulders shook. Elaine narrowed her eyes. I don't want to know. You really don't, Russell said. She left us alone. I sat across from him. For a moment, neither of us mentioned the itineraries. Then I looked down. Dates. Cities. Russell closed the laptop. You decided? Not yet. Okay. He studied me. You really mean that? That you should decide? Yes. I do. Even if I leave. The question hit differently this time. Less like he wanted permission, more like he wanted information. I considered lying. Instead I said, I won't like it. His eyes stayed on mine. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go. Something in his face loosened. Thank you. For what? Actually answering. I was about to make a joke when Elaine called from upstairs. Russell! He closed his eyes. What? Do you still have my passport? You gave it to me. Exactly. He stood, then paused beside me. This is what happens when I come home. What? I forget everyone here kept living without me. The line was quiet, not polished. He looked toward the stairs. Mom travels now. You have a daughter. The grocery store where I worked is a boutique hotel. That one feels personal. It had excellent bagels. It absolutely did not. He smiled, then went upstairs. I sat alone at Elaine's table looking at the tour dates he had covered with his laptop. I understood something I had not wanted to. Russell was not choosing between leaving and coming home. The home he remembered no longer existed. Neither did the Gavin he remembered. 2 days later, he called me. Not texted. Called. I signed. I sat down on the edge of my bed. The tour? Yes. The answer hurt immediately. Cleanly. I looked at the wall. When? About an hour ago. 6 months? Yes. And you're calling to tell me. I didn't want you hearing it from Mom. I swallowed. Good. Silence. Russell said, Good? Yes. You sound like you swallowed something sharp. I'm multifaceted. Gavin. I closed my eyes. You wanted it. I think so. That's not confidence-inspiring. I won't know until I'm doing it. Then go find out. He was quiet. I could hear traffic behind him. You're really not going to make this easier, are you? Which part? The part where I know whether I made the right decision. No. He breathed out. Okay. I almost told him I was glad he was going. That would have been a lie. So I said the smaller truth. I'm glad you chose. Russell did not answer for several seconds. Then, softly, so am I. We met that night. Neither of us said the word goodbye. He still had almost a month before leaving. But when he kissed me outside my apartment, one hand warm against my back, I could already feel the calendar inside it. The strange thing was, knowing he was leaving did not make me want him less. It made pretending this was only nostalgia impossible. For the next 2 weeks, Russell and I became very good at pretending a calendar was not sitting between us, not ignoring it. That would have required less honesty than either of us had left. We just stopped making every evening answer for the future. Sometimes he came to my apartment after helping Elaine prepare for Portugal. Sometimes I met him downtown after work. Once we ate takeout on a bench because every restaurant nearby was full and Russell refused to wait 45 minutes for what he called food arranged vertically. You work in theater. That's different. You build fake rooms for a living. Functional fake rooms. You once made a staircase that went nowhere. It went somewhere emotionally. I laughed hard enough that a woman walking past us smiled without knowing why. Russell looked pleased with himself. That was something I had learned about him now. He liked making me laugh more than he liked being funny. At 23, I had thought those were the same thing. They weren't. There were other things. He slept badly after stressful days, though he claimed he did not. He hated hotel air conditioning but always turned it too cold. He no longer liked beer. He had started drinking tea in the evenings because caffeine after 3 made him philosophically unreliable. He called Elaine every Sunday when he was on tour, even when they had nothing to say. And when he was worried, he rubbed the inside of his thumb against the first knuckle of his index finger until the skin turned pink. I had never noticed that before. Or maybe he had not done it then. The distinction mattered less every day. He was learning me too, not through memory, through irritation. "You cook when you're anxious," he said one Thursday. "I cook because people need food. You made soup at 11:30. People need food late. You live alone. I might have become hungry. You made 12 servings. I looked at the stock pot. That feels judgmental." Russell leaned against my kitchen counter. "You also send voice messages now. I have always communicated. You once refused to leave voicemail because you said recorded speech was morally suspicious. I was 23. Right, sorry." He said it with exaggerated seriousness. Then softer. "I like the voice messages." I looked at him. "Why?" "Because I can hear when you're trying to sound less worried than you are." "That seems invasive." "Probably. And yet you admit it." "I'm experimenting with growth." He reached for me. Not dramatically. His fingers settled against my hip, like they had started learning the geography. I turned toward him. We kissed beside a pot of soup I had no practical reason to make. That was what changed most. The kisses stopped feeling like evidence. They became part of the evening. Sometimes brief, sometimes not. Sometimes they led nowhere except Russell stealing my side of the sofa and me telling him he had the spatial ethics of an airport. There were moments when I forgot he was leaving. Then his phone would buzz with a production email, or he would mention Chicago, Denver, Seattle, San Francisco. 6 months would return to the room. We still had not decided what happened after he left. We had, however, started behaving like people who would eventually have to decide. That Friday, Mara texted me at noon. "Home tomorrow. Internship thing. Food?" I called her. "You know there are complete sentences available." "Expensive." "What internship?" "Charlotte." "That's not what I asked." "I know. Dinner tomorrow? With your mother?" "She's coming." "Of course she is." Dana and I met Mara the next afternoon at a cafe near Pack Square. Russell was not invited. Not because I was hiding him, because Mara needed her parents, not a developing romantic situation. I told myself that distinction was healthy. I did not examine how relieved I felt that I would not have to watch Russell and Dana occupy the same table. Mara wanted to apply for a summer internship with an environmental nonprofit in Charlotte. It paid almost nothing. The housing situation sounded illegal. The work sounded exactly like something she would love. Dana asked practical questions. I asked increasingly practical questions. Mara narrowed her eyes. "Dad." "What?" "You're doing the insurance voice." "I do not have an insurance voice." Dana looked at Mara. "He does." "I'm assessing risk. You're making Charlotte sound like a war zone." "Have you seen the rent?" "I'd have roommates." That sentence has never improved a situation. Dana kicked me lightly under the table. I stopped. Mara smiled because she knew she had won for the moment. We talked another half hour. Then she left to meet friends. Dana stood outside with me while we waited for her ride. "You're being weird." "I'm 45. I'm allowed." "No, different weird." I glanced at her. She looked exactly like the person I had spent 16 years married to. Not romantically. Not anymore. But recognition had its own permanence. "Russell?" I sighed. "Mara told you." "Mara told everyone." "Excellent." Dana smiled. "I'm not asking. You're very clearly asking. I'm observing." "You always were bad at that. I was married to you 16 years. I became excellent." Her ride pulled up. Before she got in, she said, "Don't turn your whole life into a courtroom just because something matters." I stared at her. That was dangerously close to advice. Forget I said it. I planned to. She got into the car. I watched her leave. Then I turned and nearly walked into Russell. He was standing 10 feet away holding a paper bag. For a second, all 3 periods of my adult life seemed to stack on top of each other. Russell looked toward Dana's departing car. That was Dana. He nodded. I guessed. What are you doing here? Bakery. He lifted the bag. You? Lunch with Mara. Internship. I stared at him. How do you know about that? You mentioned she was considering one. I did. Voice message. Tuesday. You were making soup. I remembered. Not the fact. The conversation. Different thing. Russell glanced again toward the street. Do I get to say hello someday? The question was careful enough that I almost disliked it. She's not a museum exhibit. I know. I mean, Dana. So did I. That stopped me. Oh. Russell smiled faintly. You assumed I meant Mara. Yes. That feels significant. Don't make it symbolic. Wouldn't dream of it. We walked toward my car. Dana's ride had already disappeared into traffic. Russell said, Was it a good marriage? There were about 20 ways that question could have gone wrong. Maybe he knew it. He kept his eyes ahead. I answered anyway. For a long time. And then? It wasn't. He nodded. That simple? No. Of course not. We stopped at the crosswalk. I looked at him. You don't have to understand it. I want to. That's different. I know. The light changed. We crossed. At my car, Russell leaned against the passenger door. I thought about her differently. I waited. When you told me, he said, at first. My shoulders tightened. I know. I think I made her into proof. Proof of what? That you had lived some life you weren't meant to. There it was. At least he said it himself this time. Russell looked embarrassed. Which is arrogant. Yes, I know that now. Good. And maybe I wanted it to be true, because then the years after us, I went still. Russell kept talking for another half second, then saw my face. What? The years after us? His expression changed immediately. Gavin, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I meant the years we weren't together. That's not what you said. You know what I mean. There was the mistake. Small, ordinary, fatal. I laughed once without humor. I think I finally do. Russell straightened. Don't do that. Do what? Take one bad phrase and turn it into a verdict. Dana was not the years after you. I know. Mara was not the years after you. I know. My marriage, my daughter, my career, every apartment I lived in, every person I loved, none of that was an intermission. I did not say intermission. You didn't have to. His jaw tightened. I came back here and found out you had a life I knew nothing about. I'm allowed to feel something about that. Yes. Apparently not. Yes, Russell. You are, but you keep standing at the center of it. That's not fair. Isn't it? No. His voice sharpened. You told me not to remember you too much. Then you got angry when I didn't know enough. You said no old places. Fine. You told me not to make you part of the tour decision. Fine. You wanted me to understand Dana, understand Mara, understand the man you became, and every time I think I'm getting there, the rules change. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because part of that was true. Russell saw it. His anger changed. Not victory. Something worse. Sadness. I'm trying, Gavin. I know. No, I don't think you do. He looked away. Cars moved through the intersection behind him. I think part of you keeps waiting for me to prove I fit perfectly into this life, before you admit you want me in it. The words hit somewhere too accurate. I hated them immediately. You don't get to decide what I'm doing. Then tell me I'm wrong. I couldn't. Russell rubbed his thumb against his knuckle. Pink skin. Now I knew what that meant. He noticed me noticing and dropped his hand. I need a few days. My stomach tightened. Before what? Before I say something just to make you stop being angry. I'm not asking you to fix it. I know. He looked tired. I'm trying not to. That was the difference between us now. At 23, one of us would have reached for the other. Kissed. Apologized too early. Called relief resolution. Russell stepped back instead. I'll call you. I wanted to tell him not to go. I also wanted him to go before I said something designed only to make him stay. So I nodded. He walked away carrying the bakery bag he had never opened. I stood beside my car long after he disappeared around the corner. The worst part was not that Russell had misunderstood my life. It was that he had understood one part of me perfectly. I had been testing him, and I had never told him there was a test. Russell did not call the next day, or the day after that. I knew this because I checked my phone often enough to make the distinction embarrassing. He had said a few days. That was reasonable. I respected reasonable things professionally and hated them personally. On Monday morning, I sat through a 40-minute meeting about storm loss projections while wondering whether Russell had started packing. By lunch, I had convinced myself I was not waiting for him. At 2, I checked my phone beneath the conference table. Nothing. At 5:30, I drove home and made enough pasta for 4 people. Russell had been right about the cooking. That irritated me too. I did not contact him. Not because I was trying to punish him. Because for once, I could not tell whether reaching out would be honest or simply an attempt to make the discomfort end. There was a difference. Apparently, adulthood involved discovering distinctions nobody had warned you about. Tuesday evening, Mara called. Not texted. That was how I knew something was wrong. Hey, are you busy? I can be dramatically unavailable if it helps. Dad. I sat down. What happened? I got the internship. For 1 second, relief arrived before anything else. Then I remembered Charlotte. The terrible pay. The roommates. The roommates. The apartment listing with 1 bathroom for 4 people. That's great. You don't sound like it. I do. You sound like you're about to explain renter's insurance. That is important. Dad. I rubbed my face. When do they need an answer? Friday. And you want to go? Silence. Not long. Long enough that I already knew. I think so. There it was. The small, frightened certainty of someone trying to say what she wanted before someone older explained why she should want something safer. I recognized it because I had been waiting for Russell to do the same thing in reverse. I can help you look at housing. Mara sighed. That wasn't my question. I closed my eyes. Apparently, the Vance family had infected everyone I loved. What was the question? Do you think I should go? My first answer came immediately. Charlotte was expensive. Her current campus job was stable. She could find something closer. The nonprofit might not lead anywhere. She would be living with strangers. I started giving her the sensible version. You should think about whether the experience is worth what you'd be giving up here, because once you factor in rent and transportation. Okay. That one word stopped me. Not angry, just disappointed. I knew that tone. I had used it on Russell. I leaned back against the sofa. Mara. Yeah? Yeah? You want to go? She hesitated. Yes. Then why are you asking me? Because wanting something doesn't automatically make it smart. No. I looked across my apartment. Russell had sat in the chair by the window 2 weeks earlier, complaining about my soup. The room seemed perfectly normal without him. That was part of the problem. My life worked. I had built it to work. So, Mara said, I realized I had gone quiet. Sorry. Insurance voice again? Probably. I stared at my bare feet, then said, Go see if you like the life that comes with it. Mara was silent. The sentence reached me only after I had already said it. What? I said, if you want the internship, go find out whether you actually want the whole thing. The work, Charlotte, the roommates, being broke for a summer. That sounded almost encouraging. Don't tell your mother. She'll know. She always does. Mara laughed, then softened. You okay? The question was casual. I nearly answered it the way I usually did. Fine. busy, tired. Instead, I said, I'm figuring something out. With Russell? I made a face even though she could not see it. Your information network is disturbing. Mom, of course. She didn't tell me anything. She just said you were being weird. That woman has been divorced from me 4 years and still gets to publish reviews. You were married a long time. There was no accusation in Mara's voice, no hidden meaning, just fact. 16 years, a whole life. I thought about Russell saying the years after us. Then about myself telling him not to use our history as permission, while quietly asking him to prove he could fit every part of the present before I risked giving him any. I had wanted him to choose the tour for himself. Good. Then part of me had been hurt when he had. I had wanted him to respect Dana. Good. Then I had watched his every reaction, as if he were sitting an exam. I had wanted him to know Mara without assuming a place in her life. Good. But I had not given him time to be clumsy about it. I had wanted everything from him except uncertainty. That was not exactly fair. Mara said, Dad? I'm here. You disappeared. Occupational hazard. You sell insurance. Underwrite. Same thing. I did not correct her. That was growth. Probably. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for 10 minutes without cooking anything. Then I put the pasta I had already made into containers. 1 serving for tonight, 1 for tomorrow, the rest in the freezer. There was something strangely reassuring about not needing to turn anxiety into 12 portions. Russell still did not call. Wednesday passed, then Thursday. By then I knew his departure date was getting close. I also knew Elaine was leaving for Portugal before he did. I imagined Russell at her house, checking documents she had already checked, and pretending he was not nervous about 2 departures happening within days of each other. I wanted to know how he was. I did not call. Late Thursday night, my phone finally lit up. Russell. The message was short. I leave on the 14th. I'd like to see you before I go. I read it twice. No apology. No reference to 22 years. No we need to talk. No request that I forgive anything. Just a date. A fact. A want. I typed 3 different responses. Of course. Too eager. We should talk. Too formal. What time? Too logistical, which was impressive coming from me. I deleted all 3. Then I wrote, okay. I stared at it. Sent it. Russell replied almost immediately. Saturday? I looked at my calendar even though I already knew I was free. Yes. Another pause. Then, thank you. I put the phone down. Across town, Russell was apparently doing his own version of not over-explaining. I learned later that he spent most of that week at Elaine's house, not having breakthroughs, packing, finding adapters, printing confirmations Elaine had already saved to her phone, arguing about whether she needed 2 pairs of walking shoes. At one point, he sat at her dining table and started writing what he planned to say to me. A speech. 22 years. First love, regret, timing, all the language that made a reunion sound like something that had been waiting intact for us. He got 4 paragraphs in, then read it once, and deleted it. Not because any of it was entirely false, because too much of it belonged to the man he had been trying to stop dragging into the room. Instead, he packed. He helped Elaine weigh her suitcase. He let her remove the emergency photocopies he had hidden in the side pocket. And on Saturday afternoon, after the last relatives left her small farewell gathering, Russell did not wait around assuming I would appear. I wasn't there. That mattered. He said goodbye to everyone. He helped Elaine carry 1 bag upstairs. Then he went back to his apartment alone. At 7:15, I stood outside his building, with my hand hovering near the buzzer. For a moment, I did nothing. There was no family event behind me now, no birthday, no old neighborhood, no accidental reason for the 2 of us to be the last men in the room. Russell had asked me to come. And I had come. I pressed the buzzer. He buzzed me in without asking who it was. That bothered me for about 3 seconds. Then I remembered I had told him I was coming. Progress. His apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building I had driven past hundreds of times without knowing he had ever lived there. When he opened the door, he was barefoot. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the boxes. Not the suitcase against the wall. Not the garment bag hanging from a hook near the kitchen. Bare feet. For some reason, they made the whole thing feel less like a departure and more like a life. Russell stepped back. Hi. Hi. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he said, "You came. You invited me. I know. You're surprised?" "No." He looked at me. "A little." I walked inside. The apartment was temporary, in the way touring people probably learn to make places temporary. Good furniture, but not much of it. Books in uneven stacks. 2 framed posters leaning against a wall instead of hanging. A plant that looked as if it had survived mostly through stubbornness. I had expected something more polished. Russell caught me looking. Disappointed? By what? My glamorous life. I'm still processing the plant. It has a name. Of course it does. Leonard. That plant looks nothing like a Leonard. Russell laughed. The sound loosened something in me. He closed the door. Then the room got quiet. I could feel the conversation waiting. Russell could too. He rubbed his thumb against his knuckle once. Stopped himself. "You want something to drink?" "No." "Good." "Why good?" "Because I have water, half a bottle of wine I don't like, and something Mom insists is tea. Strong inventory." "I'm leaving in 3 days." I noticed the suitcase. "Right." He looked toward it, then back at me. "I don't want to do the speech I had planned." "That sounds promising." I did have one. I assumed. It was terrible. "I'm sorry I missed it." "No, you're not." "No." Russell smiled briefly, then sat on the arm of the sofa. I stayed standing. He noticed. "You can sit." "I know. You're making me nervous." "Good." "Why?" "Because I'm nervous." That surprised him. It also surprised me. I sat. Not beside him. Across from him, in the chair by the window. Russell looked at me for several seconds, then said, "There were years when I barely thought about you." I had not expected that. My stomach dropped anyway. Russell continued before I could respond. "And there were years when I thought about you constantly. Then months where you'd come back because of a song, or a city, or some man who laughed wrong." I almost smiled. He did not. I kept trying to turn that into a story. "What story?" "The one where you were always the person I was supposed to come back to." I looked down at my hands. And I don't believe it anymore. That hurt. Then, strangely, it didn't. Russell leaned forward. "I don't mean I don't want you. I know." "No, let me finish badly." I looked at him. "Okay." He inhaled. "I loved you when I was 24. My chest tightened. I think I loved you for a while after that too. Then life happened. Other people happened. I changed. You changed." He looked toward the window. "I don't think remembering you gave me some special claim on the man you became." The words were clumsy. "Better for it." He looked back at me. "I don't think being first gives me anything." I let the silence stay. Russell's eyes dropped to the floor. "I hate this part." "What part?" "Waiting to find out whether the thing I said helped or made everything worse. That's most conversation. I preferred theater. People throw things in theater. Only when the budget allows." I laughed. Russell did too. The tension broke enough for us to breathe. Then he said, "I want you now." Everything in me went still. Russell did not move closer. "I don't know what 6 months looks like. I don't know if I'll love being on the road again, or hate it by October. I don't know if you'll get tired of phone calls, or if I'll become unbearable when I'm working 16-hour days. That seems likely. I'm trying to be vulnerable. You're doing beautifully." "Thank you." His mouth twitched, then serious again. "I know when I leave." He pointed toward the table. There was a printed schedule there. Cities, dates, a life in boxes. I have cities and dates, he said. That's about all I've got. I watched him. He swallowed, then asked, "Do you want to try this with me for the next 6 months?" It was such a small question compared with the weight sitting behind it. 6 months. Not forever. Not destiny. Not because we had loved each other first. 6 months. I thought about saying yes immediately. I wanted to. That was exactly why I didn't. What does try mean? Russell blinked. I was hoping you wouldn't ask that. Risk management. Of course. He stood and began pacing. I don't know. Calls. How often? He stared at me. You want a schedule? No. I'm proving a point. What point? We don't know. He stopped. Right. Visits? Yes. Exclusive? Russell looked surprised, then thoughtful. I want that. So do I. His shoulders loosened. What if one of us hates this? The distance? Any of it. I looked at him. Then we say so. That sounds suspiciously healthy. Give me time. Russell came closer, still not touching. What if you meet someone? We just said exclusive. I know. But what if… Russell. Right. He exhaled. I'm bad at this. You're bad at not knowing. That too. I looked up at him. He was 46, gray at the temples, tired, leaving. Not the man who had kissed me behind a record store 22 years earlier. Thank God. I stood. Russell's eyes followed me. Okay, I said. He frowned. Okay, what? Okay, I want to try. For half a second he just stared. Then his whole face changed. Not relief exactly. Something warmer. More frightened. He stepped closer. This time, I did too. The kiss was not dramatic. No desperation. No goodbye inside it. His hand settled against the side of my neck. Mine rested at his waist. We kissed, like men who had finally stopped asking a past version of themselves what to do next. 3 weeks later, I flew to St. Louis. Not because St. Louis had meaning. That was the point. I arrived Friday afternoon after a delayed flight, a rental car line that appeared to be violating several constitutional principles, and a text from Russell telling me the production schedule had changed. Dinner at 7 became dinner at 9:30. 9:30 became 10:15. By the time Russell reached the restaurant, I had eaten half the bread and started considering whether long-distance romance was simply hunger with airfare. He dropped into the chair across from me. I'm sorry. You look terrible. I missed you too. His hair was damp from a rushed shower. There were shadows under his eyes. He looked exhausted. And completely unlike the version of Russell I had spent 22 years remembering. I wanted him anyway. Maybe more. Dinner was bad. Not emotionally. The food. Russell's fish was cold. My pasta arrived wrong. The restaurant began stacking chairs before we finished. At 11, we gave up and walked back toward his hotel, carrying fries from a place that was still open. This is very romantic, I said. I had plans. What kind? Better than fries. That sounds ungrateful. They're excellent fries. They're average. You've changed. Deeply. Russell laughed. Then reached for my hand. No hesitation. No ceremony. Just his fingers fitting through mine, while we crossed a street neither of us had ever crossed before. The next morning, he had rehearsal. I had work emails. At noon, our plan to visit an art museum disappeared because a technical problem kept him at the theater. I spent 3 hours alone. Nothing terrible happened. That evening, Russell apologized again. I stopped him. You're working. I wanted you here. I'm here. That's not the same as actually seeing you. No. He waited. I smiled. But it's not nothing either. His expression softened. We ate dinner in his hotel room because he was too tired to go anywhere. It was not glamorous. It was also the first time I understood that I did not need every hour to prove the relationship was working. On Sunday morning, I packed. Russell sat on the edge of the bed watching me fold a shirt badly. You've gotten worse at that. I have never folded well. You used to. Careful. Right. He smiled. At the airport drop-off, neither of us said anything about 22 years. Russell checked his phone. Chicago next. I know. When can you come again? I opened my calendar. The old version of me might have waited to see what Russell suggested first. The newer version was trying to be less exhausting. Second weekend in October. I'm in Denver. I'm in Denver for work all the time. So, I hate Denver for work. That seems unrelated. It's contaminated. Russell laughed. Seattle? I checked. Too far. Cincinnati. I shook my head. Why? No reason. I just don't want Cincinnati. Excellent negotiation. He scrolled. Milwaukee? I looked at the date. Then at him. That one. You've been? No. Me neither. Something warm moved through his face. Okay. I took my bag from the trunk. Russell came around the car. He kissed me once. Quick. Ordinary. Then I stepped back. Next time, pick somewhere we don't know. Russell smiled. I think I can do that.